Good morning, Story. It's working. I didn't know if it was working or not. My computer's freezing today. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hacking Self Storage. It is Friday morning. What I was going to do today was tell you all the numbers about my acquisition and tell you what I'm going to do, etc. And I'm not going to do that anymore. I've had two people that I look up to, one mentor that I pay, and somebody I look up to in the self-storage industry reach out and said, Dean, stop fucking doing it. I was like, what do you mean? Tell me more. Why? I love it. And basically, long story short, is that they've told me that it can come across for any prospective sellers who will sell to me would be scared away because they're going to think that I am going to publicize all the information, what it was doing before and what I'm going to do to it to make it better. And therefore, it's going to be me saying, hey, guess what? That person over there doesn't know how to run a self-storage, but I'm going to improve it. I'm going to run a self-storage and make it a lot better. Which in effect is what most people do when you buy something. You're buying it because you want to add value to it. And then it's more valuable to you than it is to them. And that's why there's a price. And so it's normal. However, I do think that there is certain things. And by the way, I've been advised to stop doing this podcast as well by one of my mentors. But I'm not going to do that because I think it's a little bit different. Is that I look at this podcast as two things. If I'm really honest, one, I want to document it. Well, three things. One, I want to document it, and I want my kids to see the ups and downs of the podcast and the business and how we got from here to a 9-figure exit or whatever. I want to document that because I think it's pretty cool to do so. And number two, I really enjoy it when somebody sends me an email and saying, Dean, I've done this, I've done that. Thank you so much. It's made a real difference. It's amazing. Thank you. I really enjoy it. And my mentor's response to that was, okay, so you'd rather have money in their pocket than your pocket because it is a choice. And whatever you're doing, giving stuff away here, you could be focusing more on your business and just keeping the secret sauce yourself. And I get that. But the thing is, I'm different to most people where I don't think of money like everybody else. Money to me is just fun tokens. I don't respect it as much as everybody else. I think we respect money too much and we're too cautious about it. We don't like talking about it. And I'm completely different. I think there's enough to go around. I don't believe that if I'm having it, that means you're not. If you're having it, that means I'm not. I believe there's enough to go around for everybody. And so I don't believe in scarcity. I don't want to start believing like that. And I don't want to start thinking it's either me or you. So I respectfully disagree on that. I love people challenging me, by the way, because not many people in my life challenge me. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that as in I haven't got a boss. And so the only people who challenge me are my mentors because nobody else challenges me in life because I haven't got a boss. Everybody, if we say if I'm going one direction at work, guess what? We're going that direction. So I don't get people challenge me. So I like it when my mentors disagree with me and say, no, Dean, this is wrong because of this. And I'm like, right, okay. Let me take a minute. Are they right or are they right for their life? And a lot of the time they are right, 100%. And a lot of the time they are right just for their life, like the podcast. I believe that it's good. Ultimately, it's good for me. And number one, it's almost like a safety mechanism, building an audience. I mean, look at KSI, look at with a prime drink, look at the boxing match at the weekend. If you build an audience, look at Mr. Beast. If you build an audience with Beast Burgers and God knows what, if you build an audience, then you can always monetize from that audience at some point. And not that I'm saying that I want to or I'm going to, but I'm saying, well, I already have done because of sponsorship. I must get back to people about sponsorship of this podcast. I could make 50 grand a year from sponsorship from this podcast because of the listeners. And I should do, by the way. I want to. But if anything goes wrong in my life and I need a little bit of extra money, I've always got this. It's an asset. An audience is always an asset. And it's almost like I'm giving you information, you're giving me your time, and entertainment as well. And so anybody building an audience, I don't think for example, my dad. I don't think my dad would understand that. I think that the audience building is going to get more and more important for individuals, for brands than it is now. And so when my kids grow up, I think it's so important for them to grow an audience, because if you have an audience, then you've always got an ability to raise funds. You've always got an ability to do something. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure if I said, hey, guess what? Like AJ Osborne does for Storage Income. I've got this opportunity to open a self-storage here. However, I need £3 million. I think from my audience, I'll be able to raise £3 million. Or put it this way, I can raise a lot more money through my audience than I would be able to if I didn't have an audience. And I don't think that the advice I got, I don't think that has been taken into consideration. Also, I'm meeting a billionaire next week who wants to invest in my company, in me, or one of the reasons, because of this podcast, because they know, hopefully and they trust me because they've seen me do this for 4 or 5 years now. Is it 4 or 5 years? Anyway, a long time. And so I've built up that reputation that I must know a little bit about the industry because I've been doing it you can't do a podcast and you can't run self-storage companies and not know a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the world's, by far not the world's best. However, I do employ the world's best and get advice from or employ them. I mean, take advice from them. So there's 3 different ways that I believe that the podcast is good for me. So number 1 is I want to document it for my kids. Number 2 is I love helping people. I love it. It does mean more. It sounds corny, so I don't often say it, but I love it because helping people, it really gives me that external validation, if you like, where if you have helped somebody, it gives them a little bit of a boost. And for me, that's more than money. That's better than money because you're giving, you're helping people out. And I believe that not enough people in the world do that. We all put ourselves first, but take a step back and think, what happens if I don't put myself back first today? What happens if I put somebody else first? What happens if I put that homeless man on the street first today? What happens if you do something for other people? And I just think the world will be such a better place. But we're all hyper-focused on us and what we can get out of a relationship, what we can get out of a day, when really we shouldn't be. We should be focused on the other person. I promise you, if you focus on others, the weirdness of the world is that you end up better off anyway. And so you can say it's almost selfish because if you focus on other people, you'll be better off. So that's 1, 2. And number 3 is at some point, it's my safety net. It's an asset. Building an audience is always an asset. That's why I'm doing Mr. Self-Storage. By the way, if you haven't signed up yet, MrSelfStorage.com. The newsletter must be good because we're getting 70% open rates. So that is really, really good. I think it's 73 point something at the minute, which is not, well, yeah, anything over 50% is excellent. If you can build a newsletter with 50% and open rate, you have a brilliant asset. So we're doing really, really good there. And I enjoy doing it. And it's just me giving away everything. So MrSelfStorage.com to head on over there. Right. So I don't want for you to listen to this podcast and just me be telling you, I'm not telling you anymore because that's not the case. I'm going to give you something, but I think in the future, the thing that hit me hard was I don't want other people. For example, I would hate the old owners to look at my content, even though they knew I was going to document it. But I'd hate for them to think I've been disrespectful in any way, because the last thing I ever want to do is hurt anybody's feelings or upset anybody. And so if I don't know if it would do or not, but the content I put out on LinkedIn saying that I bought it for this is what it pays, this is what was in the bank, and this is what hopefully I'm going to sell it for. I just hope that content won't have upset anybody. If it did, then obviously, well, it's not what I'm here for. But I also want to document the journey, so there's got to be a fine line. So I think the balance is, I'll tell you when I'm buying somewhere, if it's okay with the other person, by the way, because if it's not okay, obviously I haven't got permission, so I can't. But I won't disclose the numbers because I do think that's a little bit too far. I won't disclose the numbers, but I'll disclose what I want to do with it, what my plans are, what I want to extend. Again, if the old owners haven't got a problem with it, and we're about to open a new site soon, and I can't still tell you about it yet. But as soon as I can, then obviously I'll be documenting the whole process. Because I want to. There's no point in you listening if I'm saying that I can't tell you anything, because that's not part of the deal that we've got. You listen, I tell you everything about my business. But I just think when it comes to other people's information, that's when I've got to be a little bit careful, because it's a previous owner's information, isn't it? So I've just got to be a little bit careful. So it was a very, very quick deal, was Wrexham. It was Store It For Sure. Very, very quick deal because of the money involved. Wasn't massive, and it was a high multiple if you just include what it was making. Well, it depends, because there's an ad back. because if you take their wages off, then it wasn't a high multiple because I don't need to pay their wages because we're going to do it automated. So it's a high multiple if you include their wages, but we don't include their wages because it won't be anymore. But however, there was assets, plenty of assets connected to the company, including money in the bank, a forklift, electric top of range forklift, and also the shop fit was done by Active Supply and Design, and it's absolutely brand spanking new, wonderful. And it's also got part of a mezzanine installed already. So there's a lot of assets there, which far outweighed the price that we paid for it. And if we include the fact that we're adding back the wages, because obviously we don't need them wages anymore. So if you add that back to the EBITDA, then the EBITDA means that we paid a very, very good multiple. Now, what is the idea of this site? I don't think that this site is for me long term. And the reason I don't think it's for me long term is because I believe it's a 10,000 square foot building, but the way it's designed, the building, you will never ever hit 70% square foot lettable. You'd never get 7,000 square foot top and bottom. So 14,000 square foot. You'd never ever get 14,000 lettable there. I believe it's just a little bit too small for me going forward. And the reason is because you've always got to think about the exit in mind. The exit in mind, the big boys have already looked at it, and the big boys don't want it. The reason is because it's too small, and the lettable area, you're not going to get the reception area, and it's going to cost too much money to knock it all down, and so you're not going to get that capacity that the big boys want. And so for me, what I believe this is, I believe it's a flipper site. So in America, what happens is big companies, I won't say big companies because not the REITs, but what individual investors do, individual operators who have a group of them, they buy a certain amount and then they might flip 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever for cash flow for the next ones. So I think this is a flipper site for me. So the idea is that in 3 years' time, I'll be flipping this site. I'll be hopefully getting the profits up. You'll see the journey to a certain amount of money, net profits. And when it hits a certain amount, I will be trying to sell it for whatever times multiple. And hopefully the idea is there that then I can take a little bit of money off the table, pay entrepreneurs relief, and pay my mortgage off. The reason I want to pay my mortgage off is because, as you know, it's a capital intensive business, is self-storage. And so my debt is massive. And so if I can just pay my mortgage off and think, do you know what, worst case scenario, I've always got my house. I'm taking money off the table and I'm cashing it in. It's like when you're a roulette table and you started with 20 quid and then you're up to 300. You want to take maybe 50 quid off the table and think, you know what, whatever happens overnight, I'm going to go away winning 30 quid. That's exactly the same here. I want to walk away thinking, okay, if this industry went to shit tomorrow, then guess what? I will still have my house and we're happy. But we're not happy. We're far from happy because if the industry goes to shit, it's just that all my net worth is in self-storage. I haven't got a penny investment in anywhere. Why? Because I believe I can get like 30% returns at least. And so why would I go into something? Why would I diversify when I believe in the industry so much? I believe in the industry so much. The returns are amazing. So I'm all in. I'm all in self-storage. And so in 3 years' time, it'd just be nice to take a proportion of that money, of them chips, off the table and just think, there we go. We've got that ring fence now. Nothing can happen to it. We're okay, apart from personal guarantees, but that's another story. But with kids, I don't think they can take your house off you if they're under 18 and kids living with you. I don't think that's the case. Could be wrong, but that's why I think that you're pretty safe. So that is the story of Wrexham. And moving forward, and any advice, the last thing I want to do now is tell you my strategy moving forward. I would never, ever buy a business this size again. It's just not worth it. The accounts won't be, for a business who is making less than £100,000 a year, for example, I won't, that's my criteria. It's got to be making more than 100 grand a year, probably substantially more. Because if it's not, then the accounts they probably won't have management accounts. They probably won't have accounts up to date. They're doing things a little bit different. So, for example, there was no space manager, there was no software, there was no storer. It was simply a spreadsheet. And to understand that and work it out and trying to put all that onto Space Manager, it took weeks of manual work. I didn't do it, but Angela did. Poor Angela did it. She did amazing. However, it was hard work. And it was stressful. It was stressful for me because I didn't know the exact ins and outs. I had to take his word for it. I had to take his spreadsheet for it. I didn't have the space manager to go through and think, right, this is exactly what we do. I can see it exactly, the ins, the outs, when the join. I couldn't see any of that. The accounts was all done, but it was just in a different way than what we do it. And just the understanding what unit had what person's stuff, and it was just a little bit different to how, again, I've got to be careful not giving too much away. It was just done a little bit different to how we would do it. Work for them, but it doesn't work for a big company because we need it in our ways. Everything, how we run Wrexham has to be the same as how we run Willoughby. It all has to be done exactly the same. So transferring everything across was just a little bit difficult. And I actually believe now, and when people said it before, when on these mastermind groups, it's just as hard buying a big business as it is buying a small business. It's just as much work. I never believed them. And it turns out I was right. There's actually more work in buying a smaller business than a big business because it takes a lot more to unravel and understand. It's not as transparent. It's not as easy to be guided through the accounts, etc., the space manager, the store, or whatever software they're using. It's not happening. So it's a little bit more difficult. So in the future, it was good to wet my feet in a smaller deal. With it has high ceiling, but nevertheless it was a smaller deal, and so it was good to wet my feet. But I don't think it's a strategy for me going forward. It was just a lot more questions and answers when we was going through the process, and some of the things we just had to take and just think, oh, I hope this to be true. And it all worked out. However, I just feel like a big deal will be straightforward, simple. You know what you're getting. There's stuff in place. It's unbelievably well run. There's one that I'm looking at now for £500,000. It's not for £500,000. It's doing £500,000 in profit. And I'm thinking, right, yes, I know and by the way, the added value, there isn't as much added value because obviously £500,000 profit, they must be doing something right. So I can't add as much value. However, I know everything is run very, very, very smoothly on the level of us. And so therefore to integrate it all, it'd be straightforward. And so that we're looking at the minute. Right. So that's where we are at the minute. And when somebody tells me I've done something wrong, I'm like, I don't want to hear it. And then I sit back and think, was that person actually right? Did they have a point, or are they just seeing it from their eyes? Is it right for them? And so I think it's good to have the ability to question things and think. It's like when you have an argument with your partner. I always try to sit back and think, all right, am I wrong? And more often than not, by the way, you are wrong. You have done something wrong. It doesn't matter what side of the argument you are at. You could have done something differently in 99.9% of the arguments. And so you have some fault at some point in that argument. You could have behaved differently. And it's always saying, well, yeah, but I only did it because of them. Well, yeah, but they might have only done something because of you. And so it just goes on and on. And obviously it's very hard when you're in an emotional situation. But yeah, always take, as Jacko Willen says, you have to take responsibility. It's always your fault. Always, everything's your fault. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about this last couple of days after my meeting. And I do think they have a point to a point, but I enjoy doing it. Ultimately, I enjoy doing this, and so I'll keep doing the podcast. But when somebody, obviously, I would never. I know so much about people's businesses in the industry, and so many people have come to me, and I've supported and helped and consulted, if you like, not a paid version, but consulted. And I would never. I just want to get across to everybody. I would never, ever documentize or put it out on. That's not even a word, Dean. I'll put it on that podcast. I would never ever disclose any information. I know a shit ton about the industry and people in the industry, but people tell me in confidence because they know I won't put it out there. So I also want to be the vault as well. You tell me something, it's a vault, it's not coming out. I also want to be that person when it comes to acquisitions as well, because I want to tell you the around figures, but I don't want to get deep down and tell you the figures. I think that's a point there. Okay, my friends, I won't stop boring you. I will stop boring you. I probably won't stop boring you. I'll keep doing these podcasts, but I will speak to you next week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you soon. Love you. Appreciate you. Bye.